Imagine like a pharmacist trying to save a patient's life. But before they can even administer the medication, they have to guess if the malaria pills they just bought from a supplier are real or if they're literally deadly counterfeits.
Which is just a terrifying position to be in.
Right. And I mean, in most Western markets, that scenario is almost unthinkable. The supply chain is invisible, and we just assume it's completely safe.
Yeah, exactly. It's a given.
But in parts of Africa, dealing with counterfeit medication is a daily critical reality. And it's exactly the kind of massive life or death problem that local tech founders are solving right now.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're answering a very specific premise. Do you really know what it takes to build startups in Africa?
It's such a good question to ask.
It really is. And we're pulling our insights today from a massive source. It's a 60-episode playlist from the Kurious K Podcast, last updated in February of 2026. And it is a phenomenal collection of primary sources, because it completely shatters the standard tech narrative. When you listen to these 60 different conversations, you quickly realize that the Silicon Valley blueprint simply does not map onto this environment.
Yeah, not at all.
Right. What's fascinating here is we aren't looking at founders trying to build, another slight variation of a food delivery app for a city that already has 5 to choose from. This playlist documents entrepreneurs who are stepping up to solve fundamental structural gaps in society.
Okay, let's unpack this, because going through 60 separate interviews can feel like looking at a massive mosaic from like an inch away.
Yeah, you get totally lost in the details.
Exactly. If you just stare at one single episode, you're only looking at one tiny tile. You might understand one founder's software, but you miss the sheer scale of the ecosystem they're building. Today, we're stepping back to show you the entire picture.
I love that approach.
And to do that, we can't start with the flashy apps or the drones. We have to start with the foundational environment. There's this concept from the sources that sets the stage for everything else, specifically from Gloria Nunaya's episode on Nigeria's entrepreneurial paradox.
Right, that paradox is key.
But I want to push back on this term a bit, or at least get to the mechanism of it. What exactly is the paradox here? Is it just that there's a massive population of hungry talent, but they're hitting a wall of systemic infrastructure hurdles?
That is the core friction, yes. I mean, you have an unparalleled demographic dividend. It's an incredibly young, ambitious population with this deep drive to create. But they are operating within an infrastructure that actively resists creation.
Resists creation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Emmanuel Adegboy breaks this down in his episode about solving Africa's biggest challenges. When you synthesize his points with the rest of the playlist, you see that human capital isn't just a byproduct of the tech boom.
Right.
It's universally viewed as the very first hurdle. You cannot build a tech ecosystem without first building the builders.
Which means you're essentially building the operating system of a workforce before anyone can even launch the apps. And by apps, I mean the businesses themselves.
Exactly.
You can code the sleekest application in the world, but if the underlying operating system, the local developers, the supply chain managers, the technicians, if they can't run it, the app crashes.
Right. What's fascinating here is how these founders are actively writing that physical operating system, rather than waiting for traditional institutions to do it for them.
Yeah, they're taking it into their own hands.
They really are.
Yeah.
Let's look at how they are approaching education. You have someone like Dr. Success Ojo, who is transforming Nigeria's educational landscape by integrating AI and tech literacy right at the ground level.
Oh, wow.
But they aren't just focusing on high-level software engineering. Aaron Iyama's episode argues explicitly that technical and vocational skills are the actual future for Nigerian youth.
So it's about practical, hands-on ability, not just theoretical computer science.
Precisely. Because a tech ecosystem requires hardware mechanics, network installers, and logistics coordinators just as much as it needs coders.
That makes total sense. You need the physical infrastructure side, too.
Yeah, and Wanwu takes this a step further by focusing on the adoption of internship and apprenticeship models to solve the unemployment crisis.
I really like that.
The mechanism here is brilliant. I mean, traditional university curricula often move too slowly to keep up with technological shifts. By utilizing apprenticeships, these founders are creating a real-time, peer-to-peer educational network.
They're just bypassing the slow legacy education systems entirely.
Exactly. They are upskilling a generation on the job.
That makes a lot of sense. The apprenticeship model is the fastest way to patch the operating system and get the talent ready. But that brings us to what these newly upskilled founders are actually going out and making.
Right.
Because once you have that talent, they aren't just sitting behind screens building purely digital, invisible software. They're forced to tackle the physical world. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, definitely.
Just look at the wild diversity of physical infrastructure problems being tackled in this playlist. You can't just build software if the physical logistics don't exist.
The software has to interact with a very challenging physical reality. A great example from the sources is the work being done by Opiemi Osho and Paul Kelvin with GasMonkey.
Right, they're focused on ensuring cooking gas never runs out, but how are they actually doing that as a tech company? Are they just a delivery service, or is there a technological mechanism behind it?
It is a predictive logistics model. In many emerging markets, securing clean cooking fuel is a manual, highly inefficient process.
So you have to go get it yourself.
Right, a family might unexpectedly run out of gas mid-meal and have to physically transport a heavy cylinder across town to a refill station. GasMonkey approaches this not just as a delivery problem, but as a data problem.
Oh, I see.
By analyzing usage patterns and optimizing decentralized distribution networks, they are ensuring a continuous, reliable supply of cleaner fuel. It's a logistical challenge that touches everyday survival, solved through intelligent supply chain management.
And on the other end of that physical spectrum, you have Confidence Odione looking up at the sky, actively building Africa's drone future.
Which is huge.
Yeah, which, again, solves a physical friction point. If the roads are unreliable or traffic in a major hub is completely gridlocked, you bypass the ground entirely. You just take to the air.
Exactly.
And in Botswana, you have Kedumetsi Lifai and Tawanda Matambo acting as visionaries who are literally manufacturing innovative hardware products locally.
And that drive to control the physical infrastructure naturally extends into the most critical sector of all, human health.
Absolutely.
The healthcare innovations documented in these sources are vital. Let's return to the scenario you opened with, the pharmacist and the counterfeit drugs. Dare Odumade is tackling that exact problem.
How does tech actually solve counterfeiting, though? I imagine a fake pill looks exactly like a real pill to the naked eye.
It comes down to traceability and immutable data. By using tech to assign unique, verifiable digital identities to fast-moving consumer goods and medications.
Like a barcode?
Sort of. Often it's through something as simple as a secure scratch-off QR code or an SMS verification system. A consumer or a clinic can instantly check a central database to confirm authenticity.
Wow, that's incredibly smart.
Yeah, it isn't just a business optimization problem.
Yeah.
In the context of malaria or antibiotics, solving supply chain counterfeiting is quite literally a mechanism for saving lives.
And you see that same level of stakes in other healthcare sources here, too. E.B. Offrey is driving medical inclusion across the continent with GeroCare, making sure the elderly actually have access to continuous care.
Right, very important.
And Blessing Cuomo is taking phytomedicine, which is traditional plant-based medicine, and applying clinical technological rigor to it to transform healthcare globally. So what does this all mean?
Well, it's shifting the paradigm.
Yeah. When you look at predictive cooking gas, drones bypassing bad roads, anti-counterfeit tech for medicine, is it fair to categorize this as survival tech?
That's an interesting way to phrase it.
Well, because so much of the tech we're used to seeing in Western markets is convenience tech. It makes your life 10% easier. But with founders like Dr. Sandra Bakar focusing on fundamental remittance and logistics problems, it feels like this tech is required just to make life function.
I think survival tech captures the stakes, though foundational tech might be a more accurate description of the mechanism. These founders are building the very pillars of a modern society.
Foundational tech, I like that.
But if you think about it, there is a massive missing piece to this puzzle.
What's that?
You can build the best drone delivery system in the world or the most secure medical supply chain. But if the local clinic or the consumer has no reliable digital way to pay you, the drone stays on the ground. The physical infrastructure requires a financial engine.
Right. You have to solve the friction of moving capital before you can move the goods.
Exactly. And that inherent friction transitions us directly into the massive focus on fintech and Web3 that dominates a huge portion of the Kurious K playlist.
The sources are definitely packed with founders operating in that space. Gerald Black is navigating the broader intersection of entrepreneurship and fintech.
Yes, a great episode.
Then you have Andrew Erlapegi building a Pan-African neobank called Lenco, and Inwinyula Kingamkono completely transforming Tanzanian financial habits with Tunza.
All doing incredible work.
But the one that really caught my eye is Kelvin Ogoli. He is working on making credit access seamless for the unbanked in sub-Saharan Africa. But wait, how do you actually assess credit for someone who is unbanked?
It's tough.
Yeah, if they don't have a traditional credit score, how does the technology know they are safe to lend to?
That is the genius of these local fintech models. They use alternative data.
Alternative data.
Yeah. If a traditional bank looks at a ledger and sees no history, they deny the loan. But a local tech founder looks at a user's mobile money usage, their utility payment consistency, or even their airtime purchasing habits.
Oh, so they look at how regularly they buy phone credit and
Yeah,
then...
Precisely. They feed that alternative data into an algorithm to build a completely new kind of risk profile. They are manufacturing trust where traditional institutions see a blank slate.
Which brings up a term we hear constantly, Web3.
Oh, yes.
If I'm being honest, half the time I hear Web3 or crypto in mainstream media, it sounds like speculative hype.
Yeah, Kairos.
Just people trading digital pictures, but the sources here frame it completely differently.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that in a Western market with deeply established, highly reliable legacy banking systems, Web3 often does feel like a solution looking for a problem.
Right.
But listen to the mechanisms Adeshina Ajayi and Hakim Disu explicitly discuss in their episodes. In their context, blockchain is solving real-life problems because it provides trust, transparency, and borderless transactions in regions where traditional institutions might struggle with currency volatility or bureaucratic inefficiency.
You're saying the blockchain acts as the neutral arbiter of truth.
Precisely. Take Daniel Block as a perfect example. He is using blockchain solutions to power real estate.
Oh, let me guess how that works.
Go ahead.
If a centralized physical land registry is difficult to access or vulnerable to corruption, say, someone just alters the paper records to claim they own your land, a decentralized ledger fixes that.
Exactly.
Because a blockchain is immutable, once the property deed is recorded on it, it cannot be quietly changed or destroyed.
That is exactly the mechanism. The technology provides an unhackable guarantee of ownership, which unlocks the ability to borrow against that land, sell it securely, and build generational wealth.
It's the ultimate leapfrog effect.
It really is.
We always hear about how Africa largely skipped laying down millions of miles of copper wire for landline telephones and just went straight to mobile networks. It sounds like we're seeing that exact same leapfrog effect now with banking.
Yeah.
Are they just bypassing the sluggish legacy banking infrastructure and going straight to decentralized finance?
The sources strongly suggest that is the reality. Maimuna Mohammed has an incredible episode exploring DeFi, that's decentralized finance and stablecoins in Web3.
Oh, stablecoins, right.
Right. For a listener who might not be familiar, a stablecoin is a cryptocurrency tied to a stable asset, like the US dollar. If you are a founder operating in a country experiencing severe local currency inflation, a stablecoin isn't a speculative investment.
No, it's a lifeline.
Exactly. It's a digital life raft. It allows you to protect your business's purchasing power without needing a foreign bank account.
It's the required plumbing for the ecosystem.
Beautifully put.
And once that plumbing is in place, it enables broader cultural shifts too, like Rafael Adima, who transitioned from crypto mining to building games on Web3. The financial engine starts with survival and moves into the creative economy.
Yeah, the progression is natural.
But let me ask the uncomfortable question.
Okay, hit me.
We have the upskilled talent through apprenticeships. We have the physical solutions like predictive cooking gas and medical drones. We have this cutting-edge Web3 financial engine.
Right.
But who's actually paying for all of this infrastructure? Building neobanks and manufacturing hardware in Botswana takes serious, sustained capital. How do these founders survive the early days?
This raises an important question, and it is the ultimate reality check for any tech ecosystem, and that's venture capital.
Yeah, VC.
Mark Kleiner has a deeply insightful episode discussing the harsh challenges and the unique opportunities of venture capital in Africa. It is a highly constrained environment.
I can imagine.
And Francisani goes even further, detailing the specific, critical questions that founders absolutely must ask a venture capitalist to protect their equity and their vision.
Which makes me wonder about the power dynamics. If capital is constrained locally, are these founders entirely at the mercy of traditional foreign gatekeepers?
It's a huge concern.
Like, are they relying on VC firms flying in from London or San Francisco, dictating terms, and potentially fundamentally misunderstanding the local market dynamics?
That happens quite a bit.
Because if a foreign investor expects a quick software flip, but the founder is trying to build a 10-year physical supply chain, that seems like a massive vulnerability.
It is a vulnerability, and for a long time, it was the dominant narrative. However, the sources reveal a powerful counter-movement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're seeing a massive, localized push for the democratization of funding. The ecosystem is realizing it cannot rely solely on external validation.
That's great to hear.
Timothy Kondayo, for example, is specifically working on democratizing access to startup funding with Get Equity, allowing smaller, local investors to back local companies.
So they are building their own financial lifeboats.
Exactly. You have leaders like Yunus Ajim, who is boldly taking the initiative to fund African startups directly, completely changing the face of who writes the checks.
That changes everything.
It really does. And Matthew Marsden is focused on equipping Africa's entrepreneurs not just with the technology, but with the necessary capital structures to ensure long-term success. They are domesticating the venture capital model.
And what's really striking as you listen to these sources is that once they secure this funding, the ambition isn't just to conquer their local neighborhood or even just their home country.
No, not at all.
The end game is global scaling. Amin Yusuf's entire focus is on putting African startups on a global stage.
Yes.
Ajay Ramasubramaniam is enabling growth across various emerging markets, sharing these tested solutions with other regions facing similar infrastructure hurdles.
It's all about exporting that knowledge.
Exactly. And you have Ahmad Mukoshi, who is pushing web hosting from Nigeria straight to the world. They aren't just building for Africa, they're building from Africa for everyone.
Which is a profound paradigm shift. It redefines the African entrepreneur from someone catching up to the global economic stage to someone actively leading it.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's bring this all together.
Okay.
For you listening right now, if your goal was to get a clear, mechanics-driven picture of this space without drowning in information overload, I think this journey through the Kurious K playlist delivers. We've gone from patching the human capital operating system with AI and apprenticeships to seeing founders build vital physical infrastructure like medical supply chains and predictive clean energy.
So it's a massive scope.
It is. We've explored how they bypass legacy banks using alternative data and immutable blockchain ledgers. And finally, how they are domesticating their own venture capital to take these battle-tested ideas global. This isn't just an ecosystem that is growing. It is an ecosystem that is actively leapfrogging.
And that leads to a thought I think is vital to leave you with.
Yeah.
Based on everything we've synthesized from these 60 sources, African startups are currently being forced to master foundational life or death challenges.
Right.
They are solving complex problems like counterfeit drugs, massive unbanked populations, and fractured supply chains. And they're doing it using the most cutting-edge tools available, like alternative data algorithms and Web3. If they successfully perfect these models in some of the most challenging, high-friction operating environments on Earth, will the next generation of global technological solutions be imported from Africa to the rest of the world, rather than the other way around?
Wow. When you step back and look at the entire picture, suddenly that outcome doesn't just seem possible. It seems inevitable, something to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us.